everybody's had what I call an NOE. Do you remember that term from the book?
Oh, no. What was that one?
That's a no other explanation moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had several.
And once you tell yours, everybody, oh, now it's like, oh, we can talk about this because I had this happen. And we all just want permission to share these awesome experiences, but we're so worried about what other people are going to think, and we shouldn't be.
Welcome to Beyond Talking Points from Little Visionaires Bookstore. I'm Bridgitte Jackson-Buckley, and today I'm speaking with Suzanne Giesemann. Suzanne Giesemann, mystic, medium, and former U.S. Navy commander, is the author of 14 books. She joins us today to discuss her newest book from Hay House, The Awakened Way, Making the Shift to a Divinely Guided Life. Welcome, Suzanne. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bridgitte. Every time I hear that biography, it still feels like a whole different world to me, my background versus now.
I can imagine 14 books. I mean, U.S. Navy commander, that's amazing to have changed so much. You clearly were following guidance.
Oh, no
So,
doubt.
so I read The Awakened Way. There is a lot in this book, Suzanne. I mean, there's a lot. The tools and practices you have, the way you show our oneness through stories and examples, the practices to deepen your connection to the divine and your higher self, and of course, the validation of our multidimensional nature. There's so much in there. I really like the sit in peace and noticing snags and pulling the threads. I love that so much. It's a resource that you can revisit more than once, not just one read, but you can keep coming back to it.
That's the goal. And you really summarized it beautifully. You captured all of it. Yeah, that's what I hope, that it's not just something that people read once, that they will use it again and again, because these tools that I provide are meant to be used daily to transform you truly.
Yeah, yeah. And I am a meditator. I meditate daily. And I have, gosh, probably several months ago, I watched a video, your Bless Me Method video.
Yeah.
And I had been, because I like to experiment with meditation beyond simply sitting in silence. And I do use that, but reading the book, it just gave me just two things. Like I wasn't saying shift and I wasn't saying come now, but I definitely experience connection when I practice that method.
Excellent. Yeah, I've had people say they've been meditating for decades and they've tried the Bless Me method, which is in the book, and it just took them to a new level, which is always a goal.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So while I follow your work and I'm familiar with all the events and workshops and classes you have going on, I'm just not clear on how this all happened for you. So I know you came into your gift of mediumship late in life after the sudden and tragic death of your stepdaughter and the unborn child she was carrying. And in the book, you talk about sitting in meditation trying to contact her. So was that the beginning, like when you started to study mediumship, or like what prompted you to sit and try to contact her? Because if you were a Navy commander, that seems like a world removed from sitting in meditation trying to contact someone who transitioned.
I know, looking back now, Bridgitte, that this is my path to be doing this work, but I had no idea I would be a medium. If anybody had told me that in the Navy, it was as far from anything I could have imagined as anything. I'd heard about mediums, but I never saw spirits. I didn't consider myself intuitive, although as aide to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I had to be a little intuitive to know to always predict his next step. That was part of the job, but I didn't consider that intuition. But absolutely, it was Susan's passing that put me on this path, but I didn't realize that's what I was doing. What was the turning point for me was Susan's funeral. When I saw her body in the coffin, I had an absolute epiphany and an undeniable knowing that there is this something that we now call a spirit or the soul that enlivens the body. because her body that I looked at was so completely different from that vibrant young woman who we knew and loved that it was just like, well, duh, we're not just these bodies. And
Mhm.
so I somehow knew that Susan still existed and I was going to connect with her myself, not to become a medium. I just figured she has to be out here somewhere. And this was 2006, and meditation was not as mainstream as it is now. So to just intuitively know I need to start meditating to connect with her shows me I was being guided and didn't realize it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I can completely relate to that, because in the past several months, we have dealt with a transition in our family. And let me just step back for a minute. I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, and one of the main teachings is that I am not a body, I am free, for I'm
Yeah.
still as God created me. And prior to the transition we experienced a few months ago, I think no one had passed in our family for a couple of years, but I remember attending the funeral and just not, looking at the body and not thinking, oh, I'm not a body, I'm spirit. But with this most recent transition, it was actually my stepfather. I looked at him and it was so clear to me. It was so clear. Like
Yeah.
it that
Yeah.
the spirit was gone and it had just animated the body, and it was just not him. I mean, that point was just completely driven home to me. So I completely can relate to what you're saying.
Yes. And then it's been years now since I realized that my meditative practice had this single focus, not to quiet my mind, not to release stress, but to tune in to Susan. That was it, my stepdaughter, Susan. I wasn't trying to connect with guides or angels. But the funny thing is, that happened as a result. But I realized that the singular focus of only watching, listening, scanning my awareness for her trained me in focus, contemplation, presence, expanded states of awareness, which are ideal for mediumship.
Right, right. And that focus of attention, that is such an important point. So did she ultimately come through meditation, or was it like an outwardly contact, like where you saw maybe an energy signature outside of you, or how did you ultimately make contact? And I'm surprised that you didn't have any fear around it.
Well, first of all, I was raised with no religion, so there was no instilled fear in me whatsoever.
Okay,
I knew my motive was pure and this was all about love. So fear never even entered the picture.
perfect.
And then, yes, she came to me in meditation, and I hesitate to tell people because I don't want them to make the mistake of thinking this is everybody's path. But she waited 3 years. And I say waited instead of it took 3 years, because she came recently and told me I didn't come through earlier on purpose. You needed training in a lot of different areas before I showed up. If she had showed up right away, that would have been it. I would have been conversing with Susan to this day, and that would be nice. But instead, during those 3 years, my psychic abilities, my intuition, my ability to connect with guides and angels just blossomed. And the whole time I'm connecting with these other beings, I'm like, that's nice, but where's Susan? I just
Oh,
stayed
okay.
goal.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to know, like how did it come about? Because meditation, usually when people hear the word meditation, they may say, "Oh, I can't meditate, thoughts are everywhere." Like there's resistance to it. But it's a practice. So that means you have to practice it. And if
That's
you yeah,
You mentioned you like in my book the practice called sit in peace. I call that the sip of the divine. And I have a video how to do that on YouTube. And the title of that video, you'll appreciate this, is No More Meditation Excuses. Because with this simple 3-minute practice, you just can't make an excuse that I can't find 3 minutes, and
exactly.
I can't quiet my mind. That's the other excuse. I don't have the time. I can't quiet my mind. Well, you learn it. You're right. You can't quiet your mind, but you can lengthen the gaps between these thoughts that constantly arise just by watching the thoughts and asking a specific question each time you do the practice, such as, what is it I need to know right now that I don't know? And now you're listening, and that creates silence and space.
It's incredible, and it's just it's so important because like to increase the gaps, that's absolutely what I experienced. And as you increase the gaps, you can have more states of peace throughout the day.
That's
I
it.
mean, throughout the entire day, it's like your ego is being quieted a bit so that contact guidance can come through, so that higher level, high vibration information can come through, and you can be guided in the way that you're to be guided. And then as far as like her not coming through for 3 years, no, it doesn't mean that everybody would have that experience because everybody's different. Like some people might have dream contact because when my father transitioned, I knew that I was going to have contact with him because I had been having dream visitations from others. And I knew he was going to come. It was just a matter of when and what is he going to be like. And it was 3 days
Oh,
after his, yeah.
nice, nice.
Yeah, yeah. But I
But
just, oh,
can I add one thing to that piece you said about we create more space so we have more peace during the day. The other benefit of creating that space between all the thoughts is now other beings, your guides, angels, your loved ones across the veil can slip in the cracks there during the day. They can put their thoughts in and you notice them. That's the key. You allow yourself to be snagged and to say, wait a minute, where did that thought just come from? Because you're not overwhelmed with the normal monkey mind.
exactly. That's exactly what I experienced. There's something else that you say that, oh, you write in the book, no amount of reading can substitute for the actual experience of your multidimensional nature. And understanding that this physical reality is not the only existence, and meditation is absolutely a gateway to that.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. So when you began to study mediumship, like do you feel like it was relatively easy for you to make contact, or did you experience that you had a lot of blocks?
It was very easy. And here's why. Because I had been meditating daily, trying to connect with Susan. That's the training that I didn't realize I was actually undergoing. Training in when you set an intention to connect with someone, now that you know how to instantly create a little space in your mind, now the spirits can connect with you. But I had no idea I was honing that ability. I was asked to write the biography of medium Janet Nohavec, and she called me into her classroom to write about how she teaches. So I'm sitting in the back as a journalist. I'm just going to study how she teaches. And I listened to her teach how the spirit world will give you specific types of evidence. If you ask them, they'll give it to you every time. And I thought, how interesting is that? That's pretty cool, like a system. At this point, I hadn't even connected with Susan, but I had been meditating for 2 years, every day. And Janet says to the class, there's a spirit here. Why doesn't somebody come up and connect with them? Suzanne, you come up here. And she put me on the spot. And this is all told in my book, Messages of Hope, and in the documentary online, Messages of Hope. We recreated that scene. And I stood up there in the front because, the Navy officer says, I can do this. I'm not going to run out the door like I want to. And just absolutely stunned myself by discerning evidence about a spirit who I couldn't see, couldn't feel, but the information came to me. Now, over the years, I've developed the ability to feel them. Sometimes I see them, but that's very rare, but I definitely feel them now. But from the beginning, it was pretty easy because once you just focus and trust that someone is here in response to an intention, boom, 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 the evidence is present.
So I asked about the blocks because we're normally not aware of like, our unconscious beliefs until a situation arises and those beliefs come up. So if you were a Navy commander, that's a pretty logical world. And then coming into contact, that's an intuitive world. But it seems like the situation with your stepdaughter passing unexpectedly just broke your heart open and made you so willing, to communicate with those who have transitioned. And so you found, as you were studying, you could feel the surge of energy when someone wanted to communicate with you as opposed to seeing.
No, I didn't even feel them at first. It was a matter of knowing that they would give us evidence. So that's that left brain.
Okay, the
The very
evidence.
beginning was dominant, but it's over the years of meditation that actually activated more of the right brain, brought that online to a point where they're now very balanced. So I went and studied with some of the best mediums in England. And I went over there and I said, if I'm going to travel all this way and give my time and effort and money to this, I need to feel you guys in the spirit world. So turn it up. And I began at that point in 2009 to really feel when they come into my presence. So to this day, if I can't accurately discern someone's personality, character traits, to feel like I'm them when I merge with the spirit, I will call off a reading because it's so critical to me to actually feel their presence.
Okay, so like for like what exactly do you feel? Because I know when I'm meditating and when I set the intention to contact with spirit, I feel a tremendous feeling of love. It
Oh,
it it feels like bliss, like it all sometimes it almost feels like a little too much to take. It's so strong. So when
well,
you're merging with a spirit, what does that feel like? How's it different? Oh,
my camera keeps going out
I
and
know, but we
it's
can still hear you.
got to be a spirit thing.
I'm thinking the same thing.
uh, when someone steps into a room, if you're at a party and they were a force, they're a big person, everybody turns, they can feel that energy. They feel that. So that's what that person would feel like to me if they had passed and they step into my awareness. If somebody was shy and withdrawn, but I'm expecting them, I'm expecting to feel a spirit, I just sense who's here. And oh, there's just a feeling of somebody who's shy and a little bit withdrawn, but I can feel their love. Now, there are some people that come through who are still learning and growing on the other side. And I will feel what they were like when they were here. I'm gonna think, oh my gosh, your brother was not able to love at all when he was here. He's showing me the side of him that was very angry and judgmental, but he's not like that now. So they show me and let me feel how we would recognize them. And it's incredibly accurate.
Okay, so when you merge with them, when you feel them, do you also set the intention to disconnect from their energy field at the close of a reading or at the close of any
And
contact?
yes, and I teach all my students to say, thank you very much. You must completely leave my energy field now.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important. Okay, so we've been talking so much about feelings, and when you're dealing with the loss of someone, the feeling of grief is very, very strong. So how does that block communication with a loved one?
It is, it's like any wave of energy, it comes and goes. And so I tell people, if you're at a point where your grief is swamping you, don't try to connect then. Wait until you're feeling a little more calm. It will pass, these waves, and we overcome any lower vibration with love and gratitude. So you just find in you some memory or regenerate the feeling of gratitude for having that person in your life. You turn up the love and you send that energy outward. And now that helps the spirits to connect with you.
Okay. So for okay. So would you say then that the most pivotal contribution to your healing following the passing of your stepdaughter was meditation, or was it something else, or was it a contribution of things?
The most healing was a reading my husband and I had with the medium. And that happened before I connected personally with Susan. And it was so healing because there was zero doubt in both of our military minds that Susan was in that room with us. the evidence that this medium brought through, that she had no way of knowing, the description of Susan, things about her life were so clearly coming from Susan, it just rocked our entire worldview. In an instant, we could still grieve her, but to know that, oh my God, what we felt in our heart is true, she's really still here, it's the most comforting, healing thing I can imagine. And that's what I love about mediumship. We can do that for people in under an hour.
That's amazing. And have you ever had dream visitations from those in spirit or from yours?
Yes.
So then how do you, okay, so that's my question. How do you determine if it's an actual visitation or if it's just your consciousness working through something?
Well, you have had that visit from your father, so you
Mhm.
know what it feels like. It's such
Yeah.
a difference between an actual visit that's solid and real versus a dream when you wake up and you try to remember the dream and it just disappears. It's just wispy. It's like, what just happened there? The other thing besides the solidity, the realness of it, is that dream visits are always uplifting and loving, whereas a non-visit can often be disturbing, distressful, and that's you working through the grief and
Oh, okay.
just energy
Okay.
clear.
Okay. So let's say for people who normally have, oh,
Yep.
are you there? Okay, so for people who may have persistent dream visitations from their loved ones, does it ever transfer over into the waking life where they may see their energetic signature or maybe hear them? Like, have you heard of that? Like,
I don't hear too many examples of that, and I actually don't hear of people who have a lot of dream visits. Usually there are 1 to 3 visits, and people just don't forget them. It takes effort from those in the spirit world to make their presence known, because we're like a radio dial. We're operating at one frequency, and those in the spirit world are a different frequency, and we have to bring them into resonance. We do that through radiating love and gratitude. As I said, the spirit world has to adjust their frequency somehow. So if they could come to us without a dream, they'd be visiting us all the time. They know we want to see them, so they will come to each person in the best way they can.
mhm. But even sometimes when people have those experiences, there's just still doubt. Like, was I making that up? Like, am I imagining it? Why do you think there's so much resistance? Because there's so much evidence that the soul lives on. I mean, it's just everywhere, but there's still some resistance to it.
It's the way our brains are hardwired. If I've really studied the left hemisphere of the brain versus the right, and the left hemisphere is all about logic and rationalizing things and putting pieces together in a way that makes sense and that we can believe, and it will try to talk us out of what the right brain knows, which is that everything is connected and we all flow together. So we are trained by culture and by our brains to only trust what we sense with our physical senses, and that's a shame.
Yeah, yeah. It's an extreme emphasis on the material world when we're spiritual beings.
Yeah.
So, well, meditation, as we've talked about, can be so pivotal, but there's another practice that you talk about, and I love this story that you write about with Odin, with through automatic writing. I was wondering, like, what made you ask for that? You asked for a gift encounter with any higher being who could help you travel to their world. Like, what even made you ask that question?
Because I'd had so many what I call adventures in consciousness after starting to meditate daily. Like I said, it just opened my awareness to worlds upon worlds, that to think that we are the only beings who exist, who are conscious and sentient and creative and clever and fun, is so limiting. And so I just learned, well, if spirit people will visit me, and if we have guides and we have angels, which the Navy officer did not want to admit, but the evidence was overwhelming, I just said, well, let's just open it up to any benevolent being that's going to serve the greater good. And in steps this incredibly powerful presence. And so you learn in the book to engage whatever you sense. So I just said, who are you? And he says, Odin. And I don't know who Odin is. So I say, tell me about you. That's engaging. And once you have this personal experience of interacting and receiving verifiable information from higher beings, which we, of course, go and Google afterwards, the internet is just amazing to back up these adventures in consciousness. Then you really start questioning reality, which is another chapter in the book, isn't it? To question what we have just assumed is reality when it's so much more. Odin's the one that helped me really take the lid off the box.
That was so interesting, Suzanne. The second I read that name, I thought about the movie Thor because I think his father's name was Odin. But I just thought, oh my gosh, but because I meditate, but I've never even thought about asking such a question. But what I always do, that you mentioned, you use the word benevolent. I always stay to connect with beings whose purpose is the evolution of humanity. And because I have such a solidified spiritual practice, I know that I'm connected to the divine and that there's no worry about any riffraff, I'll say, coming through. But that's so important, and I don't know, that's just so interesting. I'm gonna have to do that in my meditation.
Please do. Yeah. Try it. And that again is also the same practice of just waiting and watching and listening. And you just notice all of a sudden all the thoughts, all the images that start coming in awareness after you ask. And you just notice, well, that's not a different being, and you let that float through. And well, that doesn't feel like anything unordinary. You let that flow through, and then suddenly you become aware of an image that has no reason for being in your mind. And so now you say, why did that just show up? But you don't just wonder, you ask higher consciousness, why did that image just pop up in my mind? Now you watch and you listen, and now you start pulling the thread, and it opens up, and now you start to feel different things. You notice what stands out from your normal experience and
Hmm.
age it. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
it is. It is so fascinating. I love it. And what you just said, it made me, because you said you can notice something that maybe feels a little off and you just let it pass through. And it's like, well, where is that coming from? What is that? That what just popped into my mind is to be cognizant of what you allow into your consciousness, because you and Ty, I think you were on the RV and you were going to read a book, and you had this entire experience where you chose this book and it ended up leading you to this questionable environment that appeared to be a cult. And I love that so much, because the whole point of spirit guiding you, because it was just, yes, 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 go, let's stop, was to be mindful of what you're reading. Your reading can take you off track. That is, oh, it's so important to be aware of what we take in.
Yes, and the meditative practice, being super aware of your thoughts, that's another thing that plays over into your daily life. You become much more aware of your thoughts, and you say, is this serving me to think this way? And then you
Yeah.
let it go and you upgrade your thoughts. And that's how we evolve.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you write, the better way is the awakened way of balancing soul awareness with human nature. Instead of demanding that life go the way you want it, you flow with what is. And you are truly a living example of this, of our power to choose love or fear, to use our free will to choose love or fear. Because when you started meditating, that was a choice to go with the flow, to follow your heart. You could have chose to just stay in deep, deep grief and just close your heart, but you chose to open your heart. And your life could have gone in a completely different direction because of the choice that you made. So I just wanted to point out that it's so important that to follow these really strong callings, these pulls that we have, the curiosities to look in things, even if it will, blow the lid off of our perception of the world, because that needs to happen to us, because the perception that we've had of the world has not always been ideal, I'll say, and served our highest good, or served in a good way.
And I would say it's time for people to stop worrying about what other people think or say.
Oh yeah.
The bottom line is this helpful? Is this healing? And once you start talking about these things, you find out everybody's had what I call an NOE. Do you remember that term from the book?
Oh no, what was that one?
That's a no other explanation moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had several.
And once you tell yours, everybody, oh, now it's like, oh, we can talk about this because I had this happen. And we all just want permission to share these awesome experiences, but we're so worried about what other people are going to think, and we shouldn't be.
No, we shouldn't be, but that's the point of having courage. And, I think we're getting into a time, well, we've entered a time where it's going to become much harder to suppress our natural selves and what really calls to us. Because I definitely experienced that, talking about this subject matter, I would have a little lid on it. I'd be very quiet and very censored. But since I would say like the past couple years, it's just so prominent in my life that I just have to talk about it. And I've been for years a logical left brain person, well read. So if I'm talking about something like this, there must be some credence to it. I'm not some crazy, person. So yeah, just be who you are, follow what interests you. Okay, so what would you say is the most surprising or unexpected part of your spiritual journey?
The unexpected part is that I can now honestly say I can see, sense, know the soul in everyone, and I love everyone. Never expected that. I heard somebody say that. In fact, I wrote a biography, The Priest and the Medium. This was Wayne Knoll, the medium in that book. He said that about people, and I thought, wow, I can't say that at the time. I just couldn't imagine being like that. It was just normal judging other people and feeling different, distant. And then I said to myself, he's a model for that. If one other person can feel that way, I want to feel that way. And I set the goal of discovering what is it in me that wasn't allowing me to feel that way. So now I go to airports and I walk around and I look at people and they all look so different from me, and some look the same as me. And I just walk around with my heart like, I love you all. And I know that sounds crazy, but it is the most beautiful way to live. And we have to train ourselves to live that way. But once you do, it just changes everything. And people will say, well, you even feel that way about a terrorist or a murderer or rapist. I see those people and I see they are simply beautiful souls whose human role has so occluded their awareness of the fact that they're souls that I actually feel compassion for them. Do I condone their actions? Not at all, but I can still love the soul. And if we could do that for everybody, there's no reason to come here anymore because we've evolved that much.
Right, right. And of course, there's always that we don't know what anything is for. And it's the judgment that maintains the separation. And so I find like when you say something like that, oh, I love everyone, there's a tendency for people to give you the most extreme examples of people who they deem as unworthy of love. But if we're all connected, if we're all one, it's in a sense saying that we're unworthy of love if we are deeming someone else being unworthy of love. So, so it really,
I love this. This conversation is so delicious to me. I could have these conversations
I
all day.
know, I know.
Thank you.
And so I really like that statement that you said, what is in me that's stopping me from seeing the love in others, from seeing others as simply beings of love and light walking around the world. That is prominent in my thoughts these days, to see everyone as the love and the light of the one infinite creator, because that's what we are. And it is so true, Suzanne. Like when we're not talking about syrupy love,
Right.
like yeah, we're not talking about that. It's joy, it's peace, it's gratitude, it's compassion, and it's your day will feel so much better and so filled with peace when you look out into the world through a mind that's connected and steeped in love. I mean, it's just wonderful. And it's like because when you're looking through a mind that's steeped in judgment, and I think I know what everybody should be doing and what everything, it's a totally different experience.
It is.
Yeah,
Uh, keep doing
wonderful.
what you're doing because you sure get it.
Well, I would say that I really hope that you enjoyed listening to this conversation with Suzanne Giesemann. Her latest book, The Awakened Way, Making the Shift to a Divinely Guided Life, comes out in April. And Suzanne, you have so much going on your website. Can you talk about the pre-order details and gifts that you have? There's so much going on.
Well, we like to work without hype. I don't like that whole vibe of get this and that, so we just love to balance that which is free with that which is not free, and give gifts when it's appropriate. So yeah, if you order the book now, we did create some beautiful gifts that thank people for ordering the book, no strings attached. And then we're running a contest because that's fun. So refer the book to other people. You get a point for buying the book. If somebody else buys it and says you referred them, you get a point for them. Like send it to your book club. That's like 10 points. And then the people that get the most points, we're going to have a giveaway of some readings with me or a group channeling session with me. So we're just having fun with the book promotion. And then there are other things like I'm leading a cruise to the Mediterranean this summer, 14 hours of getting together with kindred spirits on a cruise around the Mediterranean. These are things that have just literally, Bridget, fallen into my lap. I don't go searching for these opportunities. People have come to me because the community is just so filled with love that we're attracting that kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah, the cruise sounds really fun. I saw the email for that. I mean, there's so much are you going to the Omega Institute or you already went?
I'm teaching there this year, next year. Yeah, I do a weekend workshop there that's just really great for learning to connect with your loved ones who have passed.
Wonderful. And then you have the monthly connection. What's the focus of the monthly connection?
The monthly connection is that spirit is teaching me new things every day. And I get evidence from the spirit world every month from my readings that it's meant to be shared. So for 7 years, every month, I've had 2 hours worth of new material from spirit every month. So people just gather and I share the latest wows and the teaching from spirit about how to connect yourself, how to live a more peaceful life, how to get over our challenges more peacefully. So it's always a love-filled event. You can feel the energy. We all do have a little trouble sleeping afterwards because it's a very high.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, for someone who may be new to your work, what would you say about the Awakened Way book that can help them to become acquainted with your work and just with themselves as a being of spirit and understanding oneness and connection?
Just check out my podcast because this is or my YouTube channel, hundreds of videos literally about this work. But I would begin by following that curiosity that we've piqued here today. Just pull the thread and say, okay, I want to know more. And the Awakened Way talks about the 3 E's. Educate yourself. So watch the videos, look at the website, and then experience for yourself. That's really what the Awakened Way is all about. It takes it beyond theory to, wow, I'm coming to know I am a soul, and I can make that shift just like that to the soul's awareness rather than this really restrictive, constricted human story that has held me back too long. And then engage higher consciousness by not just wondering, how do I change my life for the better, asking the source. It's a very fun process that's not linear. Educate, engage, experience. It's just onward, 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 and upward. It makes it fun to get up in the morning. What is going to happen today, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that. I want to know more. That's spirit. That's the key. That's the way spirit speaks to us through inspiration, through curiosity. And it's almost like we've left spiritual breadcrumbs for ourselves. All we have to do is follow them.
That's right. And do what I call connecting the dots. And
Yeah.
then synchronicity will show itself over and over in your life, and you'll know, okay, this is working. I'm in the flow.
Wow. Thank you so much. Well, remember, the best way to support your local independent bookstore and the author is as simple as buying a book. Suzanne Giesemann is a spiritual teacher, author, and messenger of hope who guides people to the certainty that love never dies and that we are part of a multidimensional universe. Living the awakened way does not mean your life is boring or devoid of emotions. On the contrary, by living consciously, you can fearlessly take on greater adventures knowing there is a safety valve, a simple shift to the soul's perspective where peace reigns. You can find out more about Suzanne's upcoming events, workshops, online classes, and the wonderful book pre-order details at SuzanneGiesemann.com. Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Thank you, Bridget. What a joy.